Hi everybody and welcome to another video. My name is Richard Seidlitz, aka TLM01, and I'm the owner of redpants.lol. Today I'm going to talk about the cornerstone of maintaining a V8 Vantage, and that is an oil change. I'll go over really briefly some aspects about the different components that are involved, and the oils especially, because there's a lot of confusion about that. The confusion basically stems from when Aston Martin first brought the V8 Vantage, and even now they still use Castrol products. The oil that was used when the V8 Vantage was first brought to the United States is a Castrol oil that is also used in BMW's M cars. So you can actually get oil for Aston Martins from BMW. They usually charge a couple bucks less per liter, which adds up when you need 10 of them. The confusion stems from when BMW switched over from Castrol oil to Shell. So here's the oil. And as you can see at the top, it says original BMW engine oil, and that's purely for marketing. The bottom part where it says M twin power turbo, bad marketing, because the name of the engine, M twin power turbo, can't use this oil because this particular oil, the 10W60, doesn't go well with it. Bad Shell. So that caused confusion for Aston Martin guys because, well, if BMW switched over from the oil that we also use, should we switch over as well? Well, the answer is no. This was done for contractual reasons. I'm willing to bet that Castrol's contract with BMW ended and BMW got a sweeter deal from Shell. It's not saying anything about being better or worse, it's just that it's good enough for the engine and it's more beneficial for BMW for whatever reason to use it instead of Castrol. Probably because they got a sweeter deal. What that means for us Aston Martin owners is that you can use either one. You can use the Shell or the Castrol, or what I'm going to be using, Motul. So this is another 10W60. It just came to the US from Motul. Interesting story, going back to BMW, is that the BMW guys saw that Motul had a 10W60 motorcycle oil, and some of them decided to try it out in their M cars, and they loved it. And so Motul took that, and they decided, okay, well, if they like this that much, let's make sure that it's actually perfect for their cars. So they looked at it, they tweaked the formula a little bit to be more compatible with car engines versus motorcycle engines, and voila, we now have Motul's new 10W60 X-Power 8100, which is a big mouthful. So let's talk about what's needed for the oil change. You need 9.5 liters, so here's two 5-liter jugs of 10W60 oil. You need an oil filter, and the ones that I saw on my website are the OEM ones. As you can see, Aston Martin. This is how they're packaged from Aston Martin. Very fancy white flimsy box with no wrapping on it whatsoever. For the 4.3 liter, you need one of these sump plugs. Aston Martin recommends you change it every single time, and the reason is because there is a soft rubber O-ring that is built into this. It's a flat molded O-ring, and so they recommend it being changed every single time. On the 4.3 liter, there's one of these and two O-rings for bypass filters. On the 4.7 liter, there are 3 of these, and that's it. You don't have to worry about the bypass filters. So I do package these and sell these on my website as maintenance packages, makes everything much easier, and it's a crap load cheaper than you'll pay from a dealership. So on the 4.3 liter, again, you have these O-rings. What they are bypass filters for the wet sump, or excuse me, for the dry sump. Whew, that was a bad mistake. Drink. These you should definitely replace every single time because they are what holds those bypass filters in place despite there being covers on them. When you do this oil change, you'll see that the bypass filters themselves are cylindrical metal filters that fit in and are pressure fit with these O-rings. So you do want to replace these every single time. The covers for those bypass filters are held in by these little demon bolts, and I say that because they're Torx bolts, and if this shows up you can see mine is no longer a Torx bolt because these are notorious for seizing. When they seize, they're extremely difficult to get loose and out of the car, and then you can't clean out those bypass filters. If those get clogged, well, those are issues. So what I ended up having to do is use a Dremel to cut across the head of this so that I can use an impact screwdriver. I don't even know what the hell the thing was called. It was awesome, but I don't remember what it was called, to get this out. So what I decided to do instead of supplying these, because they do seize and they're horrible with it, is to just give these to you guys. When you order these maintenance kits, you'll get these little hex head. They're nothing special. I get them from Fastenal. They're made in China, but they're just standard 8.8 grade bolts. I've been using these for 2 years now to test them out. And on one of the filters, the other filter I kept the little demon bolts. The demon bolts, no kidding, seized, and these ones are holding in place very nicely and not falling out. So they're completely optional if you want to use them. I include them free of charge, but they replace those bolts. Again, that's only on the 4.3 liter. There are a few things that you need to know when it comes to doing the oil change itself because it's a dry sump. And that's pretty easy. I'll cover those things as I show you how to do the job. So if you stay tuned for a few more minutes, we'll get started.
Okay, so the first thing you want to do once you have the car safely up on jack stands, I have it on all fours, nice and easy, levels out the drivetrain so everything drains a little bit better, is you want to start off by removing the dipstick. It's got a cap that's built in, sitting over there on my workbench. I can show you that in a minute, but you just unscrew that and pull it out of the way. The reason I do this first is because once this is open, it allows everything else in the system to drain that much easier. Instead of having the glug, glug, glug effect, that's a technical term, it'll actually pour out nice and smooth, so it's easier to deal with without making a mess. So down here, there are a few things to show. Let's see if I can do this gracefully here. The first one is that you have multiple drain points. You can see this is where the oil bypass filter is. I've already removed it. I'm going to be showing you why in a minute. But if we start at the front of the car, there is a reservoir right here. It's the one that you pulled the dipstick out of. The bottom side of that has a plug. That's going to be your first drain point. When you go back from there, you're going to see the oil filter. You'll see the first bypass the first bypass filter. And then you'll also see the sump plug, which is right here. Further back, you're going to have another bypass filter right back there. Hopefully this shows. It might be a little dark, but it looks exactly like the first one, but further back by about 1 foot. What I do is I do them each one at a time. I'll start with the reservoir, let that one drain, then button it back up. Then I'll remove the oil filter, same thing, put on a new one. One thing that you want to do when you do that is when you have your new oil filter, you'll see there's a rubber gasket in it. Get a tiny dab of oil and just enough to coat that with just enough oil so that you don't have a frictive surface. You want it to be nice and smooth. That'll help it seat better so the rubber doesn't bind, which can cause a leak. After I've done that, I do the sump plug. Let that drain out, replace it with a new one. Once I've done that, then I remove the first bypass filter. I do it that way just because it's easier to deal with the bypass filters one after the other so you're not switching tools around. When you take this off, there's going to be a pair of Torx bolts holding this on. Like I said in the introduction, I include bolts to replace those. Either way, you want to remove those bolts. That plate will come right off. Looks like this. You can see there's a little spring clip underneath it on the top side of it. Once it's installed, that helps keep that bypass filter in place. It's pressure fit in there by an O-ring, and I'll show you that in a moment. An easy way to get rid of it, or excuse me, not get rid of it, but to pull it out, is to use an M8 by 1.25 bolt that you can thread in, and then use a pair of pliers to just gently wiggle that out. You can use your hands if you want to, but it might be a little more difficult because you're dealing with a lot of oil. It might be slick. Once that pulls out, it's nice and easy to replace everything. Each of these drain points is going to contain oil. The reservoir is by far going to be the most. You're going to have the most oil coming out of this. Make sure that your drain pan can take a lot. This actually almost filled up to the brim. I started to get worried for a minute. But each one will contain oil, so be ready for it as it's spilling. Have a lot of paper towels and whatnot in a drain pan ready to go. So this is the bypass filter. Well, one of them, there are two. As I said underneath the car, the easiest way to get this out is if you thread in a bolt, an M8 by 1.25 bolt. All you do is you just thread it in to the hole in the center, and then you can use a pair of pliers to grab onto that and wiggle it out as you're pulling down. Don't use too much force because once it pops out, you may slam into your drain bucket like I almost did. But this is what the filter looks like. So as you can see, cylindrical. It's got this metal mesh. What you want to do is you want to clean this out. The other thing you want to do is that part of the maintenance kit is a pair of O-rings. That's that O-ring right there. So the easiest way that I found to do this is if you get yourself a little pick, you can hook onto there and just roll it right out. It just comes on out. It's easier to do when you're not trying to film it because then people are watching. With the new one, you can take it, and let's clean this guy up a little bit first. So you want to do this with each of the two, and then they pop right in. They do take a bit of work to get them back in because they are pressure fit. So when you do it, just don't be surprised if you have to work it in a bit. Go slow, steady, even pressure. Don't try to force it. Well, more than you need to. But this one's the clean one. You can take it and it just rolls right on. Nice and simple, just like that. And then it gets reinstalled.
So the last thing to do is fill it up with oil. Takes 9.5 liters, fills up right in the reservoir. If you're worried about there being residual oil from the drain, you can put in 8 liters and then check the level and fill it up half a liter at a time until you're at the proper level. That's usually what I do anyway, just to be on the safe side. One thing I'd like to point out is if you have one of my oil catch cans, this is a good time to drain it. I drain it 2 or 3 times a year, depending on how many track days I'm doing. But for most people, you only need to drain it once a year. So during your annual service, when you're doing your oil, it's a good time to drain this as well. Only takes a few minutes. I've got a video of that and a write-up on my website and on YouTube. I think I timed it out to be 5 minutes flat to do that. So not too bad for once or twice a year. But that's all there is to it. That is changing the oil in a V8 Vantage. So if you have any questions, you can contact me through my website, www.redpants.lol, or directly through your email, rich@redpants.lol. Thanks.